Good afternoon once again. This is probably going to be my final video from today, actually. At least from this afternoon. I want to talk about super middleweights in the world of boxing right now, or the 168 pound division. Basically, just to state the division and where we're heading next, really. Personally, myself, I think super middleweight's one of the most exciting divisions in boxing and has been for quite a while, even dating back to the late 80s and early 90s in particular. And today, we've got quite a few names in there. Probably the standout name, Andre Ward. I think we all kind of understand that even despite his long layoff, Andre Ward is the best 168 pound fighter. Maybe even possibly the best 175 pound fighter as well, really. Depending upon how you look on that argument. But anyway, I just want to go through the guys, really, or the top contenders at 168 right now, and just see where, just give my opinion where everyone's at, because, I'll be honest, I might be a little bit biased here, I try not to be, but I'm a Nottingham lad. Carl Froch is, of course, from Nottingham. And Carl Froch is, I've followed his career for a long time. A long time. Going back to his 6th professional fight. Now, when I first watched Carl Froch, he was in Nottingham Arena back in 2006, I want to say. Maybe 2007. And the people, at that time, I was still doing a bit of boxing myself, so I was with a few geezers from my local boxing club. From the area I lived in at that time. And we kind of all looked at each other and said, he got a bronze at the Worlds. He's got talent, certainly had some power. But we kind of said, Carl Froch ain't going to be a world champion. He'll do well on a domestic scale, maybe even a European scale. But can't see him doing the business on a world level. How wrong were we? And how glad I am we were wrong. The thing that you got to remember about Carl Froch, whether you love him or you hate him, and sometimes his ego can even piss me off, and I'm a big Carl Froch fan, so I can quite understand where a lot of people come from, saying that he's too arrogant, etc., etc. at times. I get that. I can understand that point of view. I'm not disputing it. But the one thing, the few things I should say that people have got to take into consideration is Carl Froch put his boxing gloves down in his late teens and didn't pick them up again until his early 20s. He took a break, okay? Hence he came into the sport a little bit later as a professional. Well, I say a little bit later. Some geezers don't even get into the sport as professionals till they're in their 30s now, because they spend a lot of years in the amateurs first, which is of course their decision. But from normally what you'd expect, Carl Froch came in a little bit later. When a guy comes in a little bit later, that can say one or two things to me. It says maybe he didn't feel he was good enough in his earlier days, or maybe he just wasn't in love enough with the sport. Maybe he just felt that he could pursue other interests in other areas. But that, it can mean a range of things. But with Carl Froch, he always came across as the kind of guy that initially never really had any belief in himself. And most of his bravado that came across on camera, and I'm not talking nowadays, by the way. I'm not talking the Carl Froch of today, that Mr. World Superstar at the press conference. No, I'm going back before even the John Pascal fight a few years ago, right? And a lot of Carl Froch's confidence and bravado then was because of his trainer and the people around him. Now, of course, him and Rob McCracken also, I think he's now the former Team GB boxing coach, so I'm sure there was a rule made where he can't be a professional boxing coach as well as train the amateur athletes. I'm not sure if that was overturned or not, to be honest. Haven't really looked into it a lot since. However, the point is the same. He was always a fighter initially that needed confidence instilling in him. And his trainer, Rob McCracken, and the people around him were very successful in doing that. And the limited abilities that Carl Froch had matched in with his chin and his heart to win They moulded a fighter that is not world class on paper, but you put him in a ring and he's a different kettle of fish. Right? There's only one opponent in world title fights that Carl Froch has gone up against where I could fundamentally say Carl Froch is better than him, and that was Youssef Mack. And that says it all about Carl Froch's boxing career. Now, I've got to hear people saying things like Carl Froch is a chicken for not fighting James DeGale. Hold on a minute. Didn't Carl Froch just fight a young gun twice in George Groves? You know, people are saying Carl Froch is doing exactly what Calzaghe did. No. Calzaghe only had one hungry lion looking at him from Britain when Calzaghe was going towards the end of his boxing career. And that young lion was Carl Froch. Carl Froch has two young hungry lions. One being George Groves, one being James DeGale. George Groves came first. Controversial stoppage, we know what happened next, blah, 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 blah. But the point is, he did something Calzaghe didn't do. He fought the hungry young lion and he fought him twice. Now, the other hungry young lion, who I'll be getting onto soon in James DeGale, I do not blame Carl Froch for wanting nothing of that. But the overall point to this part of the segment of the video about Carl Froch is Carl Froch has overachieved all the way through his boxing career. Let's not get that confused. He has overachieved for his talent level, for what he's capable of doing. His speed, his movement is dreadful. His defence isn't the best, right? Yet he's gone out there and he's done the business, and he's raised Nottingham's profile in the process, as well as British boxing's profile in the process, and he's done a superb job of being our number one guy for the last couple of 2 or 3 years. So you've got to look at it from that perspective. Both guys, so Carl Froch is just one of them guys. Just look at him and you think he's not going to achieve anything, but he just ticked every box and then more. The defeat against Andre Ward, look, Andre Ward's class. Andre Ward's too good. Is there anyone that's ever given Andre Ward any problems? What, the guy's hasn't lost since he was 8 years old, for God's sake. You can't hold that against him. You can't hold him against him for not wanting the rematch either, let's be honest. Carl Froch, right now, he's just fought a young hungry lion twice in George Groves. He knows himself. He's only got 2, maybe 3 fights left. Why fight a young guy again? You've just done that. Take the Chavez fight if he gets past Fonfara. Take the Chavez fight. I think that's a barnstorm of a fight. I'm a Chavez Jr. fan as well. I wouldn't want to predict right now who wins that fight, but I'd certainly hope it would be Froch. I think Froch is certainly capable of winning it, but I think it's a real 50-50 tussle. And then, personally then I'd like to see Froch fight the City Ground on his retirement due, if you like. The problem is finding an opponent for that particular occasion. He recently called out Bernard Hopkins. That might be his best option, to be honest with you. Bernard Hopkins is, as proven in the Kovalev fight, he is slowing down now. He's still a wily old fox. He's still an alien, and he can still, has the potential to beat Carl Froch. There's no doubt about that. But if Carl Froch shows up like he does in Nottingham, I can't see Bernard Hopkins putting up with that. I'd even fancy Carl Froch to stop Bernard Hopkins in Nottingham, to be honest with you. If it was in the States, I wouldn't. But in Nottingham, Carl Froch is a different beast. So I would fancy that. The only other option I could see Carl Froch taking for a homecoming retirement would be to get Mikhail Kessler out of retirement for a rubber fight. I don't think the interest is necessarily there 100% on a world scale, but it would still make a lot of money. It'd still draw a good crowd to fill the City Ground, about 40,000. I think it'd still draw that. And I think it would be a special occasion because Mikhail Kessler's got a lot of respect over here in the UK anyway. He's got a lot of UK boxing fans. And I think, it would be a nice thing to kind of see both those guys, end of an era, go out together, retirement show, still a world title on the line. I think that'd be nice. That'd be nice. But anyway, that's my opinion on Carl Froch. Going on to next, I'm going to try and speed up a little bit now. So just spent 10 minutes on the guy who's probably my favourite fighter, but that's only because probably I'm not in a man more than anything else. Going on to Andre Ward just briefly. I touched on Andre Ward in a video I did a few days ago, actually. Who's he going to fight? And I'm still scratching my head. Who are you going to fight, Andre Ward? Froch don't want nothing to do with you no more, because Froch wants slower fights because he's on the run down to the end of his career. He doesn't want the tough, fast, slick fights anymore. I think Carl Froch would have fought Andre Ward a couple of years ago after the Kessler fight had Andre Ward's demands not been ridiculous. I do genuinely believe that fight would have happened if it weren't for Andre Ward's demands. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, look at Andre Ward's interview after the Mikhail Kessler Carl Froch fight. It was an interview we did at the O2 in London straight after the fight, and he even says, "I will fight Carl Froch again. You know, we could probably do Wembley." Nah, no. Carl Froch and George Groves only sold out Wembley because of the bitterness and the rivalry and the controversy of the first fight. And even then, I think it was only about 77,000, 78,000. You know, they didn't sell out the full 80,000 allocation. Although I think that's more due to the fact of Bellends buying loads of tickets and trying to sell them at higher prices and pricing people out of going to the fight, rather than the fact that they weren't actually, they could have been sold at genuine face price, I think. But Andre Ward wouldn't draw a crowd for Wembley. You know, people as well, you have to bear in mind, people would have looked at the Carl Froch, Andre Ward, Froch Ward one fight from Atlantic City. There'd be no interest. You know, Ward got out his chalkboard and gave Carl Froch a boxing lesson for 8 out of the 12 rounds in that fight in Atlantic City. And the rest of the other 4 rounds, you know, 2 of them were clear Carl Froch rounds, which were 11 and 12. That was only because Andre Ward was getting tired. And even then, Carl Froch wasn't literally doing anything to trouble him. I think it was only he threw him off for the first time in the fight in round 11, which shocked Andre Ward a little bit. But apart from that, he didn't do anything. He just landed a few more punches. And then the other 2 rounds, round 10's debatable because it was Andre Ward slowing down, Carl Froch coming through a little bit, but it was still kind of a close round. And then round 5 was debatable because it just looked like Andre Ward was taking a round off. And Carl Froch was landing a bit more, or being a little bit more successful. But then even then you could probably score that as an Andre Ward round. So, you know, no interest. There's the only way that fight would have sold. Nottingham Arena, 12,000 fans. Ward won't want to come to Nottingham for that. And Froch won't want to fight Ward for pitiful money. And he would have had to fight Ward for pitiful money if he wanted the rematch in England, because it would have took Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Sport a lot of money. Okay, so let's rule out Andre Ward ever fighting Carl Froch again. Other particular people to mention: Anthony Durrell is currently tied up in 2 fights. Well, if he gets past the first one, he's tied up into 2 fights. Anthony Durrell is currently, of course, the WBC Super Middleweight Champion. Andre Durrell is, of course, the WBA the WBA Super World Super Middleweight Champion. I always get them confused with WBA and the regular and super titles. A load of bollocks that needs to be scrapped in its own right, but hey ho. So Anthony Durrell's fighting Badou Jack as his voluntary. Complete waste of fucking time. Badou Jack at one point was meant to be fighting James DeGale for the WBC #1 contender, but he lost to some random over in the States. Can't remember the guy he lost to, but it was a shock at the time. So I can't see Badou Jack giving Anthony Durrell too many problems. I think Anthony Durrell's got to be aware of Badou Jack, but you know, that's a different fight video for a different day. And then of course the winner of that fight has got to fight George Groves. So that rules out Anthony Durrell for a matchup with Andre Ward in the next few months. Andre Durrell, of course, one-time Froch foe, was of course part of the Super 6 tournament before that illegal shot from Arthur Abraham kind of gave him a serious brain injury and put him out of the sport for a little while. Andre Durrell is, from what I can gather, I don't have any inside sources, but I do talk to a couple of guys from time to time that know a little bit more than myself. And from what I can gather, Andre Duell and Andre Duell's camp and El Heyman are currently in talks with James DeGale's camp and Matchroom Sport about that matchup being made for the vacant IBF super middleweight title fight. Of course, it has been ordered. I think that needs to be made sooner rather than later, because I think the worst thing that could happen from a British point of view or a James DeGale point of view is for that fight to go to purse bids. Because if that fight did go to purse bids, I could see that fight going to the States, and I think that's one thing that James DeGale wouldn't want. But anyway, that's a different argument for a different day. So Andre Ward's not going to be getting a piece of Andre Duell or James DeGale anytime soon. George Groves can be ruled out because of his mandatory position with Anthony Duell. I think George Groves will probably fight another voluntary. Well, it's not voluntary, is it? But he'll just have a keep busy fight, as it were. So that rules those out. Arthur Abraham is currently embroiled into a rematch with Paul Smith. And let's be real, will Arthur Abraham give Andre Ward a rematch anyway? No chance. No chance. So that's never going to happen in a million years. Mikhail Kessler has now retired. So who does that leave? Well, leaves a lot of fighters, of course, but in terms of name, in terms of reputation. So Andre Ward looks like he's probably going to have to fight a mandatory, which I don't think he wanted to do on his comeback to the ring. But there you go. That's the situation. A lot of that situation he's put on himself anyway, so I have no sympathy. Going down to the super middleweights, we've just obviously picked up an Anthony Duell, WBC champion, of course. Like I've just briefly said, I can't see him struggling too much to get past Badu Jack. Going him to his fight against George Groves, that is going to be interesting. I can literally see that as being puncher against chin for both fighters. Both fighters can bang. Whose chin's going to hold up? That's my honest opinion. We know Groves has not got the greatest of chins in the world. More down to his stamina problems later in fights, more than anything else. So that's what makes it interesting. I literally do see that fight as a who lands first is going to win. Andre Duell, obviously, is going to be fighting, like I just said there, for a couple of minutes ago, for the vacant IBF title against James DeGale. I think the fight will happen in England. I think a deal will get done before it goes to purse bids. I've been hearing a lot of rumours about that fight. Spencer Fearon recently said on Toe to Toe this week that he reckons that James DeGale would have Andre Duell's number. I'm not so sure. The reason I say I'm not so sure is because Andre Duell really hasn't been in top class contention or in the presence of a class operator since fighting the likes of Arthur Abraham and Carl Froch. But he's never been in with someone I don't think of highly skilled as James DeGale. I would rank James DeGale nearly as highly skilled as Andre Ward. I think that is the fight that I want to see in the next couple of years more than anything, providing Andre Ward makes a comeback and gets back on the winning trail, like he will, continues on the winning trail, as of before I should say, as long as James DeGale continues on his winning trail. Andre Duell's never stepped up to that kind of class. So I would worry for Andre Duell. Is he ready? Because let's be real, Andre Duell, if you're looking at Andre Duell, Andre Ward and James DeGale, they're all very similar in the sense that they've all got great technical ability, they've all got great speed, and all three of them don't particularly hit very hard. Now, people might say, well, James DeGale's just knocked out. He's like, yeah, I know James DeGale stopped his last two opponents. But James DeGale is not a power puncher. James DeGale is a speed puncher. He's a combination puncher. And the one thing that James DeGale does now that impresses me more than anything else is he's accurate. He's accurate with the combinations. He doesn't need to land big shots, single big shots to get guys out of there. James DeGale's got the speed, the ring awareness, and the accuracy to hit a 4-5 punch combo and make them land crisp. And that's how James DeGale stops his opponents. He doesn't stop his opponents with one monstrous hit punching power. you put him in, you know, his last two foes that he's just stopped being Gonzalez and Paraban. They have not got the head movement or the defensive skills of an Andre Durrell or an Andre Ward, nor do they have the speed or the counter-punching ability of an Andre Ward or an Andre Durrell. Okay, let's just get that clear. Okay, so the only thing I'd worry about, like I say, if you're Andre Durrell, the fact that you haven't mixed it in top contention for a while is a worry. I would have recommended Andre Durrell having a fight against a top 10 contender that is more of that mould of speed and movement like Durrell, Ward and DeGale. Get in that mix, fight an opponent of that calibre before stepping it back up. That's what I would have done. The fact that he hasn't done that worries me if you're a Durrell fan. So if you're a James DeGale fan, the thing that worries me is the thing that worried me when James DeGale left the Olympics and he proved me right. Go into his head. When James DeGale left the Olympics, he let that Olympic gold medal go to his head. And as soon as he signed for Frank Warren and got that money, he let that go to his head as well. And he became one cocky, ignorant little bastard that no one liked. Right? And he got screwed. He did get screwed. People can call it close. People can call it 1-1. I think James DeGale beat George Groves. I really do. Scored it live. I scored it in favour of DeGale by a point. I've scored it since. I've only ever scored it a draw. I've never scored it. I've watched it 8 times. And I've never scored it in favour of Groves. Never. Right? People call me stupid for that. I don't care. One man's opinion. Never scored it in favour of Groves. Okay? But I think James DeGale needed that. That, for me, was the one night where James DeGale learned something in boxing for the first time as a professional. Because before then, he was just a cocky little prick. Whereas now, now James DeGale's likeable. He's matured. He's got a more sense of realism now. Okay, there is still that arrogance about him, which is good. You need that arrogance as a fighter. Okay? But it's not over the top. It's not in your face. It's not, look at me, smug, bad-end southerner. Yeah? Now it's, for reals. I know what I'm capable of. I know what I'm going to do. But look, this is how it is. This is how it is. He's a lot more breakdown. He's a lot more analytical than he was. Yeah, he's not such a dick. Yeah? Get my drift? But, so James DeGale, for me, the only thing that worries me is if his recent success has gone to his head. But I would hope from past experiences it has not gone to his head. Okay? And that he's just simply going to go out there, take this fight seriously, box to the best of his ability. I don't think he will stop Andre Durrell. I really don't. That's personal opinion. But I think he can outbox Andre Durrell convincingly. But Andre Durrell is fast, he can counter, and it makes an interesting fight. Okay? Now, obviously, I don't really want, going on from there, I don't want to talk too much about the Smith-Abraham fight because I've already done a video about that this week. So there'll be no point going into detail about that one anyway. There is another contender out there. I always forget the guy's bloody name. I want to say Rodriguez, yeah? If I'm wrong, I apologise. But I want to say Rodriguez. He's Mexican. He's like 22. I'm sure he's undefeated. And I've watched a couple of his fights on YouTube and the guy looks a beast. The guy looks an absolute beast. He looks like a Golovkin of super middleweight. Like, I know that sounds daft, but he does. He looks like he's got the setup to rip through the division. So, this next couple of years, we could be hearing this guy. We could be hearing of this guy. I want to see him fight. I want to see him fight someone big. I want to see what he's really got. So yeah, let's see this guy. Let's get him fighting. Let's get him fighting someone big. Let's get him in a eliminator fight or a world title fight. Something other than that, that's all the belts at super middle right now. But from a British point of view, and I will say this from a British point of view, we've got the potential to be kings of the super middleweight division by Andre Ward. By the time the end of this year comes, we could have every single world title belt in a British fighter's possession. Every world title belt at super middleweight in a British fighter's hands, except the WBA Super World Super Middleweight, which of course belongs to Andre Ward. Because Groves can beat, like I said earlier, Groves can beat Durrell. DeGale can beat the other Durrell. Paul Smith can beat Abraham. And Carl Froch can certainly beat Chavez Jr. I want to see DeGale versus Ward. I want DeGale to beat Andre Durrell in April to become the IBF champion. And I want him to forget about George Groves. And I want him to try and get a unification fight with Andre Ward in Vegas or Atlantic City or wherever. I want him to take that fight. That fight, from a boxing purist point of view, is probably the best fight at super middleweight. And that's the fight I want, you know. But anyway, you guys let me know what you think, really. I mean, maybe there's a couple of contenders that I'm overlooking right now. The only reason I'm not really going into more detail is I've already been blabbing on for 26 minutes, so I don't really want to continue on and bore people to death. But that's the way I see super middleweight right now. It's an exciting division. There's some good fights coming up, and I want to know what you think. Subscribe to my channel. Leave me some comments. On my channel homepage is the link to my Twitter. Please follow me up on Twitter. I'm more than happy to talk boxing any time of the day. I only really sleep about 3 hours a night. 2 young kids. Yeah, you get the story. Kind of a zombie. So yeah, thanks for stopping by. Let me know.